Good morning guys, welcome back to my channel and to this year's Pampas Christmas tree tutorial. This is now my fourth Pampas Christmas tree. You may have seen last year's. This year I'm going to try and simplify things for you so that you can follow it much easier and then hopefully be able to create your own. A couple of questions that I had on last year's video was one asking where I got the Pampas from. I've actually foraged this Pampas, so luckily the hospital that I work at has Pampas plants dotted around the car park, and I gained permission from my hospital to trim back the plants. So Pampas, sort of end of autumn, start of winter, when it becomes really windy, raining, snowing, the plumes snap and then they end up all over like the surrounding areas, whether that be a car park or a walkway, wherever they're planted, it becomes really messy. So usually gardeners will trim back the plumes when it gets to this time of year to stop that from happening, and it also encourages more plumes to grow the following year. So it's really important that you trim back your Pampas this time of year anyway. So the hospital are more than happy when I drop a little email to say, can I trim the bushes again? They just tell me that I have to be liable if I get hurt in the process. So I get to go in there, trim the bushes before the gardener comes in and does it, because all he would do is sort of chop them and then bin them. At least this way I get my Pampas for free, and I'm also doing the hospital a favour essentially at the same time. So my advice to you is, if you can forage your own, then definitely do that. You might know a couple of neighbours who've got some Pampas plants. You could give them a knock and ask if they want them trimmed. I'm sure they'd be more than grateful of the help, and then you get free Pampas as a result. You could speak with your local council if you've noticed a walkway where there's a few Pampas plants dotted around. 9 times out of 10 they'll have a gardener lined up to chop them down anyway, so you could always give them an email, a call, and just ask if you can go and take a couple of clippings, because again, essentially you're doing them a favour. Or if you noticed some plants, I don't know, around like a factory setting or in a retail park, so like privately owned land, again you could try and find who is the owner of that land and ask if you can go and trim the Pampas plants. Always ask for permission, because obviously it's somebody's property if it's on their land, but once you're given the green light, by all means go and forage your own, because it's quite fun. All I would say is wear gloves, because it can be quite sharp. Get some good scissors or shears and have like an IKEA bag or a crate or a cardboard box or something in your car or van ready, because the Pampas plumes can get everywhere. So at least if you try and put them somewhere initially, you can reduce the amount of mess. Once you get them home, a really important part is drying them out. You wouldn't just use them straight away. You need at least a couple of weeks to dry them. So you would trim the stalks to whatever length you wanted, and then you need to be hanging them upside down. I've dried mine out previously in my garage. I've got rafters in the roof, and I'm able to just tie a bunch of plumes together with some string and hang them upside down, and it means that they dry out over a sort of 1 to 2 week period. The longer the better. If you don't dry them out, you'll end up with like a sort of outdoorsy damp smell, which you don't want. So definitely dry them out before you do it. Do it in a well ventilated area, somewhere again that you don't mind getting messy, so a garage, loft, shed, somewhere like that, because the plumes will shed and it can get messy, which you'll see today. So that's where I get my Pampas from. I am aware that people sell it online as well, and by all means buy it online, but to do a Pampas Christmas tree, you are going to need a lot. I think I use about 300 if not 400 stems, and I know that people sell it online for quite a lot. I know that people charge to do these trees, and I'm pointing because that's where it's going to be. People charge to do these trees, and they can charge anywhere from like 2 to 3 grand. Little mini Pampas Christmas trees I see online, and they're about 250 quid. So people charge a lot for Pampas. If you can, forage it yourself, get it for free, dry it out, enjoy the process, and then you'll be so much happier with your tree afterwards. Plus it makes it a bit more rustic, because there'll be all different shades and sizes and stuff like that, rather than quite uniformed what you would get online. Usually I use an old 7-foot fake Christmas tree as my base for the Pampas Christmas tree. However, I don't think I've got enough plumes, or they're definitely not as full as what they used to be. I haven't foraged now for about a year or two, so this Pampas is a couple of years old, so it has shedded a little bit. It's not as full as what it used to be, and I don't feel the need to go and forage anymore. Somebody else can go and do that now. I'll not be greedy. I've got enough that I need. I've got a full box full, and it just means making the size of my Christmas tree a little bit smaller, which I don't mind doing. So I've got an old 6-foot fake Christmas tree which I don't use. It's just gone from house to house, loft to loft, but it never gets took out and put up. So I thought it's a foot shorter. Hopefully the amount of Pampas I've got will cover it, and that can be my base. Don't go using a really expensive tree as your base because it is going to get ruined. The plumes are going to stick to it. So use an old tree that you're not going to use in the future as just a normal tree. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. This one was literally 15 quid from B&M's, probably about 5 years ago or whatever. Like I say, it's not a good Christmas tree. It's very bare, very sparse, but all you need is an initial base. So that will do the job. If you can, ideally, or if you've got one, get a white Christmas tree so that your base underneath is white rather than green. And you'll see what I mean when we come to add the Pampas to it, because green will stick through, which means you need more Pampas to hide the green. Whereas if it was white underneath, I feel like that would be easier to disguise. But use what you've got. Don't go spending a lot of money. This, if you're getting your Pampas for free, should essentially be a free or very minimal cost tree. So box of Pampas at the ready. The first thing to do, because it's been in storage and it's been in a cardboard box, is I need to fluff up the stems. Do not do that in your home. Do it outside in the garden because Pampas is going to go everywhere, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. Oh, also before I forget, a good bit of advice is to strategically choose what you're going to wear. Pampas plumes will stick to everything, like a blanket, if I can say that on YouTube. So don't wear something knit or anything like that because it will just stick to everything. I'm literally wearing a silky sort of base layer from H&M, so I mean it'll still stick to it, but at least it'll just be able to brush off. And I've got sort of coated skinny jeans on because again they can just be brushed off. So yeah, little bit of advice, might not seem important, but trust us, if you come to do this yourself, you'll be grateful of the advice. Another good bit of advice is to have a separate container ready to put your plumes in after you've shook them out and fluffed them up outside. I don't know how much you would have caught on the time lapse of what was shedded there, but oh my god, it was literally snowing outside, which is why you do it outside. I'm not as covered as I thought because I'm wearing clothing that it doesn't stick to as well. I mean, I've still got a little bit here and there on it, but at least sort of coated jeans like this you can just brush off. I had to put the jumper on because it was cold, but to be fair, it's quite a workout. The more I was shaking them to shed them, I was like, oh, my watch even picked up that I was exercising. Oh my goodness, there's literally just a sea of Pampas on me gravel. The rain will wash that away. So I'm going to leave these here for the time being whilst I put up the 6-foot tree in the living room. Another thing that I'm doing different this year is usually once I've put up the fake Christmas tree ready as the base, I would then put lights on as you normally would onto a tree. But you don't want any gaps in your Pampas because otherwise you'll see the green tree underneath. So you want it as full as possible, if that makes sense. By the time you've done that, the lights that you've put on the fake green tree prior to the Pampas, you don't end up really seeing much of through the Pampas. So I was just playing around with the lights to check that they worked earlier, and they look actually quite nice, just like shining through the base. So I'm just going to leave them in the base. There'll be no lights on the actual Pampas because it's too delicate to put lights on afterwards. And then rather than just waste lights that don't tend to shine through the Pampas, I thought leave it in the base and then at least that corner's gonna light up slightly. We hope anyway. It's the first time I've done it this way, but we'll see how it looks. Right, I'll stick you on a time lapse while I get this tree. That's actually laughable for a tree. Oh my god, how did they sell them? You just don't need a good tree as your base. All you need is something that the Pampas stems are gonna poke into and stay in place, so it can be as sparse and as rubbish as possible. You could even pick one up at like a charity shop, a car boot sale, the tip. The next thing to do now is not spread out the branches like you would if this was going to be your tree as is. The less green, the better. So yeah, next step is to just tuck branches inwards and sort of create the base. You'll see how I've just literally tucked the branches in and created sort of like loops, because the wire on the fake Christmas tree is essentially what the plumes are going to stick into and hold into place, and then you can use the wire to wrap around some of the plumes if you need to. God, that looks horrendous. I'm so glad it's not window clean day, because my window cleaner would just look through and be like, what has she done this year? Is that not the saddest thing you've ever seen? Do you know what? I feel like I'm decorating the Grinch's tree. Oh, I think I'll put the Grinch on. So I've sorted out the plumes of Pampas in 2 piles of size, obviously big to small, because obviously I want to keep the tree shape, so small to big, so that I keep a cone sort of tree shape. Otherwise, if you just sort of put them on randomly, you end up with just a ball, which then does not resemble a tree at all. So to keep it looking like a tree, sort your plumes into orders of size, and then what I'll do is sort of create a topper, then I'll do the bottom, and then at that point I know where the top of the tree is going to come to a point, and then how far out I'm going to come at the base, and then I literally just slot in between to keep that triangular tree shape. So because the tree is actually a lot shorter than what I thought, I mean it's definitely not a 6-foot tree, I'm going to do the topper so that it sticks up a bit. So this is like a nice full fluffy plume, and I'm just gonna loop that so that the tree's taller than me. So I'm just using the wires that the sort of green tinsel is on, just to hold that upright, like so. And then that's going to be the height of the tree, and then a couple more fluffy plumes, and again just literally slotting them in where they'll go into, trying to keep it a little bit symmetrical, but also a real tree wouldn't be perfect, so keeping that in mind as you do it. So I'm essentially literally just poking them through. I don't know if you ever played Clunk and you had to sort of slot sticks in. Oh no, you had to take the sticks out and not let the marbles drop through or something. You're essentially just setting up a game of Clunk, if anyone remembers that. Sometimes as you poke in through different sides, you might move ones at the front. So don't worry too much, because you can just keep standing back and tweaking things, twisting things until you're happy with the final look. Sometimes it's hard to actually find where there's a gap to poke one through. So top is taking a little bit of shape. Definitely not the final tree topper, but from this angle, which is as you walk into the living room, this is the sort of shape that I want. Next, I'll slot in the base with the longer plumes to just find how far out I'm going to go, and then work upwards to meet at the top. So these stems kind of have a bit of a curve on them where they've been sort of in the box. I keep them that way because it sort of mimics the way a tree would look. So just slot in the first one, and can you see, tilt you slightly, how that then droops down? These just need to be tucked in so that there's something to grip onto, but as little green on show as possible. So just dotting these curved ones around. Nice big bushy one. So in this case, because that keeps dropping down, just using the green wire on the fake tree to hold it where I want it. You won't actually see that I've done that. Now the good thing about having your Pampas tree like up against a wall in a corner, it means you only have to do the front bit that's seen, you know, as far around to the side as can be seen, which means you use less plumes, which is obviously easier if, you know, you don't have a lot, or it's hard for you to forage them, or if you're buying them, of course it's very expensive. So push your tree up against the wall and you won't have to use as much Pampas. Tuck your branches in as you need to as you go. Any bits like this that fall off, keep them because they can be placed around the tree afterwards where there's any sort of green bits on shore that need to be covered. So keep bits like that. So there's like the bottom of the tree. Stand back. Yeah. So that's as far out as we're coming. That's the point there. These bits, if it'll focus, probably do with coming in a little bit so that they're not as far out. And essentially this now needs to go up to about there. Definitely always keep standing back, having a look like round to the sides and stuff, because you can see there where you've got like gaps to pop in. And yeah, I'll stick you on a time lapse now, but you get the gist of literally just poking them in, using some of the wire on the green tinsel sometimes to keep a hold of the pampas plumes. But essentially the more stems that you've got going and sticking in, there's more sort of places for more plume stems to then stick into, so it ends up just holding all together. Any questions, just pop them below and I will help you. So I've had to put a ring light on because it's getting dark, but I much prefer the lights in the base. I'll do a comparison of the different trees amongst the years at the end and you can see which way you prefer it to be done. But that's starting to definitely take tree shape there. So now where there's little gaps here and there, I've got a fluffy pile left of just bushy bits that have either fell off or just been tiny little plumes anyway, and I'm just going to slot them in all around to try and hide any green. As you get closer you'll see there's like bits of green there. I'm thinking if someone was sat on the sofa, there's a bit there. So all of those little bits I'm going to hide. Also, another tip is to just be really careful as you're putting your last ones in now, especially if you need to pull one out again and reposition it, because the tree is now very front heavy. So if you pull slightly, there's the risk of it toppling. There we go, Pampas Christmas tree. In serious need of a hoover, so I'll do that now. And then last but not least, you want to spray your tree with hairspray. It doesn't have to be expensive hairspray. The worse the hairspray, the better it holds usually. It means you're not spending a fortune. So I literally just spray it all around the tree, adjust any loose plumes to try and stick them back. It helps with less shedding, because obviously if people are walking past, if there's a draft front door opens, you might find that your tree sheds a little bit, so this just helps hold it in place. I mean, it's not going to hold it completely in place because you would have to go through cans and cans of it, which obviously you're breathing in, it's not very good. Just enough to hold the outer edges in place, and then obviously you'll just hoover as you need to, as you would with a real Christmas tree. And then because the smell of the hairspray isn't very nice, once that's done, and then just go over with air freshener just to get the hairspray smell away. Right then guys, there is the gist of putting together a pampas tree. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Would you try this yourself? I'll show you again in the daylight because it looks completely different when the room is light, and I'll compare it with the previous pampas trees that I've done and let me know which one was your favourite.